An outstanding way to start the live today as Afghanistan gave Australia a run for their money. It had to be the man, the Adelaide striker Rashid Khan in his home ground, who really gave Australia a scare. Australia now have to rely on another team, and that we'll be talking about further in the live. Welcome to Boomer 11. Boomer 11 is the free to play fantasy app, the best out there in the market. So pick, play, and win with Boomer 11 throughout the course of this World Cup and for all the contests out there, because there's a football World Cup coming in few days time as well. So enjoy the sporting season with Boomer 11. I have Sandeep and Jerin joining me to talk about this Australia versus Afghanistan game, and later on in this stage we'll be talking about Ireland versus New Zealand game, as New Zealand have already qualified into the semi-final, the first team in this World Cup to qualify for the semi-final. Can you believe it? We are almost the second last day, and it is the first team to qualify in the semi-final. But welcome, gentlemen, on the show. I'll get to Sandeep first up. How did you make up the game? Because it was a game which Australia thought they could have won by a larger margin. They went into that game by defeating Afghanistan by a larger margin. Nobody was talking about Afghanistan at all. But come the end of the game, they just escaped losing the game.
Yeah, I think very, very lucky escape from Australia out there, because you never know. One more lusty blow from Rashid Khan, and then Australians or the team Australia would have already been knocked out right now. And that would have made a very interesting setup for tomorrow's game, which would have been a quarterfinal clash. But with Australia's win, now Sri Lanka are also knocked out of the tournament. So now we have Sri Lanka, Afghanistan, and Ireland that we know are going home for sure. So the final spot in this group is all up for grabs for tomorrow's game. Sri Lanka can play the spoil sports and beat England to help Australia qualify into the semi-finals along with New Zealand. But yeah, I mean, a very lucky escape from Australia. Aaron Finch, after a good innings, missed out. And then we saw why Steven Smith was not given a chance throughout this World Cup, because the only chance that he got, he could not grab onto the opportunity that was given to him. Also, Cameron Green, another opening position, another opening slot in Australia, another failure for him. Looks like he can only smack the ball out of the park in the stadiums in India. Because in whatever his record has been in Australia, opening the innings or batting in general, does not look very great. So, and then Australia were made to punish for the, like, they were actually made to work very hard, because their fifth bowling option, which comprised of, they decided to go with Marcus Stoinis and Cameron Green, because they did not use Glenn Maxwell or Mitchell Marsh, both of
Yeah.
whom, it would be a very good game for both of them right before the knockout stages if Australia does make it. It is a great time for both Maxwell and Mitchell Marsh to get some runs under their belt. I remember in the last live, the two players that Jerin mentioned hasn't really come off for Australia were Mitchell Marsh and Glenn Maxwell with the bat. So I think this is a very important innings for them. And
Yeah.
but I think again the platform that they had set, 169, was probably 10 to 15 runs short of what they would have expected. They would have probably liked to put in excess of 200 if the net run rate was to be taken into account.
Yeah.
But that was never going to happen, because we always knew that Afghanistan had a brilliant bowling attack. David Warner got some runs under his belt, got the start, but I am all very,
Oh,
very
he got out
proud
in
of
the worst
what
possible
Afghanistan has
way.
done with the ball.
He got
Yeah,
out in the worst possible way. He became
yeah,
right-handed, and he got ball through the gates being a right-hander. It was a perfect dismissal for a right-hand batsman. So it was actually
also
very
very
funny.
embarrassing, one might add, because
You know
Warner
what?
actually
David
prides
Warner has
himself
batted
in playing that
right-handed
way.
on quite a few occasions. Right-handed,
Yeah,
proper right-handed. Jaren, you're on mute.
I mean,
So
David Warner was a right-handed batter till I think the age of 6 or 7, and then his
yeah.
coach, I think his coach or his mom, I think either of them liked left-handers more, so he
yeah.
changed into a left-handed batter. Then that's the story.
But also to
Yeah,
note that
but
David
yeah.
Warner has already batted as a right-hander in the Bangladesh Premier
Bangladesh
League
Premier
when
League.
he was
Yeah,
back.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
correct.
correct. When I think Gale was bowling to him and he wanted to counter
Yeah.
him. So,
Absolutely. So he's got the ability to bat right-handed as well. It did not come off today, but that's modern T20 games. We'll talk about Afghanistan bowling today to start off with, because just to take SS98's question, I think Wade as a captain did a very decent job on his first game, because he knows there was a scare of Rashid Khan and he don't have a lot of runs on the board. Remember, 168 in Adelaide is still a below par total compared to any other stadium in Australian conditions, because you have two shorter boundaries on the square and you really have to defend. And remember, I don't know why they dropped Mitchell Stark. They went in cage
yeah,
with
I mean
Richardson, who did a decent job.
that is what my point was going to be. I think that's what I have against Wade as a captain. If he made any decisions in the changing room, I do not understand why was Mitchell Stark the one who was dropped?
Dropped.
Because
He was
Mitchell
not
Stark,
injured.
I
He was
think they
dropped.
just wanted to try out a few players because probably
I
Yeah.
mean,
Austria
I
was
understand
wanted
that,
to.
Kane Richardson is someone who can. I understand the reason why Kane Richardson was brought in. I felt it was probably because of the game that we saw earlier
Mhm.
in New Zealand
Yeah.
versus Ireland, that the ball was really, sticking off the surface. He was holding on. We saw in the first innings
But
as well when
in
Australia were
that case,
batting.
they could have brought in Kane
But
Richardson
they should
instead of
have brought in
Patrick
Kane
Cummins.
Richardson instead of Pat Cummins,
Patrick Cummins,
because
absolutely.
Mitchell Stark is
Not
a
instead of
left-handed
Mitchell Stark.
left-handed bowler. He can give you a different angle. Every fast bowler that Australia has, except for Mitchell Stark, is a right-handed fast bowler. So that
Yeah.
is where Mitchell Stark would have given you a little bit more. And
And
he's no
remember,
mop with the ball.
that Mitchell Stark was getting back to his full rhythm and getting the ball to tail, and you saw that in the game against Ireland. So you can say you just dropped Mitchell Stark when he was looking very lethal. So it
Yeah.
was not the right call
And
for
in the
man.
first
They had to win.
few overs, you saw the ball move a little bit as well, especially
Yeah.
for Josh Hazelwood. Maybe Mitch Stark could have been the one to bring the ball in. And we discussed yesterday that he could have been lethal against this Afghanistan team, and they needed early wickets. Chasing, he could have been the one guy to produce those wickets for them.
Hmm. And not just that, remember that, what Mitchell Stark could have possibly done for the Australian teams, they had to defend Afghanistan to a mere total. They had to really restrict them to a mere total. That's where Mitchell Stark, the enforcing bowler, could have
Yeah.
come into picture, strike some earlier wickets, get them three down in the power play, and they would have really, had a derailing
And so
kind of
also
situation over
given
there.
the fact that this Afghanistan team is not very batting deep, like they haven't been the best of teams while batting. They
Yeah,
batting is their weaker suit by a big margin. They have a very
yeah,
good bowling attack, but when it comes to the batting, nobody has really stepped up. You have all these young
yeah,
guns,
yeah,
Ibrahim Zadran, you have Rahmanullah Gurbaz, Najibullah Zadran, but none of them, Mohammad Nabi, none of them have come to the fore in ICC tournaments in general. If you think about the World Cup, the 50 over World Cup as well, they never really turned up for that. And when it came to this T20 World Cup as well, I think Afghanistan really, I mean, they are the only team that did not win a game in the Super 12s. But
Yeah.
to add to that, I think there is also the factor that two of their games were washed out, and the game against Ireland specifically,
yeah.
because I think the only game that they could have won was the game against Ireland.
Yeah, so I think we'll talk about Australian batting to start off with, then come to Afghanistan bowling as well to understand how did Australian batting start off. Remember, David Warner got off to a very good start for them. He scored 25 runs, but at a strike rate of 138, which I thought was pretty effective. And on the other end, Cameron Green couldn't just get going. He got out on the second ball. Strike rate looks very ineffective, but that's why you should really look at the runs and strike rate, not just the strike rate at times. So important for that. But for me, the innings had to be of Mitchell Marsh and Glenn Maxwell. They both came in at a time when they were not really striking the ball well throughout the course of the World Cup. And yesterday we did discuss in our fantasy segment that you can have them both in their team because it is about time for them to come good. And Glenn Maxwell is outstanding today. Let's talk about the run out as well. We did give credit to KL Rahul for his run out because he got a informed batter out. And Glenn Maxwell today got Gulbadin Naib out, who was really striking it well. So both the runouts in Adelaide had an effect in terms of the result of the game as well. So Glenn Maxwell is outstanding today in giving that finishing touch. Though, remember, Australia really did taper off towards the latter half, which we'll be talking about in their innings progression. But when you talk about Afghanistan bowling, you have to say Fazal Haq Farooqi was a pick of the bowlers. He was outstanding to get Cam Green's wicket first up. But Mujibur Rahman was targeted by Glenn Maxwell and other folks. And so he couldn't really get. And also remember, Naveenul Haq today was a tactical call. He was brought back into the team, and he was excellent today as well in terms of him bowling those change of pace, and he really kept Australia in check. He did not really give away a lot of runs, and especially the wicket of David Warner, which we already mentioned. But Jiran, talk about this, right? Especially when it comes to Australian batting. What really impressed you, other than Glenn Maxwell and Mitchell Marsh? Is it their intent, or is it just the way in which they approach the innings today, taking on the spinners?
I'll be very honest, Abel. I think I wasn't pretty impressed with Australian batting because I felt they could have done a lot more. It seemed to be the case where, as we spoke about it yesterday in the preview, that Australia, if they bat first, they might struggle a little bit because they are setting the target. There'll be a lot of uncertainty about what target they are going to look for, and I think the pitch, to be very fair, was not going in their favor as a batting unit, because the moment I saw the first innings, and I realized that I realized that Afghanistan will be going into that pitch really really happy because the ball was sticking onto the wicket a lot more. Someone like Delaney got the ball to turn, and Mitch Santner and Ish Sodhi were the reasons why New Zealand really choked Ireland. So in that case, you expected Afghanistan to really have an advantage in terms of their spinners, and We saw that happening as well, especially in the early part. I mean, when Rashid Khan came to ball right after the power play, we saw the ball turning, gripping, and it was difficult for Australian batters. And then towards the end, both Naveen Ulhaq and Fazal Farooqi balled very smartly. They realized that the slower deliveries were gripping, and they utilized it to the best of their advantage. So that's where you see that Afghanistan bowlers are very clever. But having said
Mm.
that, even though they underperformed to a very large extent, Australia, and we see that in the innings progression. What I did like is the fact that none of them really utilized too many deliveries without actually contributing. If someone took enough deliveries, they were able to continue. I mean, they were able to really contribute in comparison to the score they have done. I think
And
if
we'll
you look
look
at
at
the
this graph for that to understand how it went about.
yeah, as you can see in this graph right here, probably the only two people who are conspicuous here is probably the three people that you'll see is Steve Smith, Matthew Wade, but
But
they did
even if
not
you
take
look
enough
at that, it
resources
is
as well. And
they took very minimal. They took very
yeah,
minimal
so
balls. They
it
scored
was
minimal
not
runs.
as if if they were not able to get going, it was not as if they consumed too many deliveries. Marcus Stoinis would be slightly disappointed because he did get a start,
Yeah,
but it was a very good dismissal. I mean, I really enjoyed the way he did it because the field was set on the offside, and
yeah.
Marcus Stoinis was looking to eyeing up the left leg side, and he balled the one that goes away from him. So in the end, he swept the ball, but because the ball was going away, he ended up dragging it and got a top edge. It's a very smart, clever bowling from Mujibur Rahman, and that's the reason why you see Marcus Stoinis underperforming. But overall, if you look, I think Australia did do a good job in terms of utilizing their resources to get to that target, and they did not wait around. That's the only thing that I felt really impressive when it came to Australian batting.
Truly, and that's something which really shows in this graph as well. Sandeep, what do you have to say about the likes of Mitchell Marsh and Glenn Maxwell, especially for them? As you already mentioned, it was such an important innings to come back in form. And if they go on to semi-finals, they'll be very pleased that their two main all-rounders are peaking at the right time. And you know what Glenn Maxwell brings into this team? Today he was batting in a different position. He was batting at number 6 for the change. He was batting in Tim David's position, which he has done quite well for Australia. Maybe you reckon today he had a better role clarity is the reason why he did much better than what he did not do throughout the course of this World Cup.
Definitely. I mean, we have been very vocal about Glenn Maxwell not performing at number 4 for Australia, especially because he was caught in between two minds as to what exactly does the team needs of him. Because a few innings where he failed, he tried to go after the bowling right from ball one, and then after he got out cheaply in the first 3-4 innings, we saw a Glenn Maxwell that we have never seen. Like a very a typical of Glenn Maxwell to come in at number 4 and consume 5-10 deliveries to get himself in. He was trying to play the longer sort of a knock, and I just think that that is not Glenn Maxwell. That is not his natural game. Glenn Maxwell has always been very effective when he has looked to attack. And he basically looked out of sorts at the start of the tournament. We could see that he was relying on reverse sweeps and all those switch hits on
Mm.
literally every ball against the spinner. But I think as the tournament progresses, I think this innings is going to be very important both for Mitchell Marsh and Glenn Maxwell, because they would have been very eager to get at least some sort of a knock over in excess of 30 sort of a knock that could give them confidence before the semi-finals. And I think if Australia goes on to make it to the semi-finals, I think this is the perfect time for Glenn Maxwell and Mitchell Marsh to come to form. Having said that, I also think that Steven Smith and Cameron Green could not do justice to the opportunity that they got. I think, yeah, Team David did not perform the way he was supposed to perform, but I think they could have still stick with the same combination and probably uh, maneuvered around the batting attack. Probably Marcus Stoinis is a good enough player to come in at number 4 for the side, because
Yeah.
he opens for Melbourne Stars in the Big Bash
Mm.
League, and
Yeah.
we have seen Marcus Stoinis do good for several franchises coming in at number 3 or opening the innings for them. So I think if somebody had to come up the order, I think it was Marcus Stoinis who could have come in at number 4, and then you could have had Maxwell and Tim David at 5 and 6 to sort
Yeah.
of enforce things. And then there is Matthew Wade to play the role of the finisher at number 7. But
That's
yeah, so I think I was a bit surprised with the changes, especially Mitchell Stark, as you guys mentioned. But then again, also Afghanistan went away with like experimented a lot. They brought in Gulbuddin Naib. I think they changed. They brought in Ghani as well. I don't remember whether he played in the
they
last
did.
game or
No, I
They,
not.
think he has been playing for them.
he's been playing. He's been playing every game.
Okay, he has been playing, yeah.
Yeah.
So, but still, I mean, there were a couple of changes, especially with their approach. I think for a change, it was good to see Afghanistan pacers doing the job with the ball, not
Yeah.
definitely relying on Mujibur Rahman and Rashid Khan to do the talking with the ball for them. I mean, that has been the case for Afghanistan throughout the years and in this World Cup as well. They have relied excessively on Mujibur Rahman and Rashid Khan to pick wickets for them. I think
Yeah,
Navinul Haq coming in picking up 3 wickets, and Fazal Faruqi has been relatively consistent with the ball when it comes to
yeah,
for Afghanistan as well, especially at the top. Early on, I think Fazal Faruqi is a brilliant bowler early on, and he's
yeah,
up there with some of the best in the world as a new bowler in T20 internationals. And also,
mm.
if you see the innings progression, if you find out the innings progression, I think Australia actually
Yeah.
faltered.
In
Yeah, I totally
progression,
agree
like
with
yeah,
Jadin on that point that 169 shouldn't be a total at Adelaide. Yeah, you can see that 7 runs per over at the last 5 overs. That is 35. So
yeah.
basically, from the platform that they had, 134 for 4 at the end of 15 overs, they should have at least gone to 190 to say the least, because they had somebody like Matthew Wade coming in later on, but nobody really got going at the end.
Yeah, I think
So
Yeah.
that's where you see that's where you see how beautifully the two Afghanistani pacers ball. They were very good. They mixed up their pace. They ball Yorkers, and batsmen were really left wanting. They did not really. They couldn't really
And look
line
at the
them up
number of
because
wickets lost by Australia at the death overs, right? They
yeah,
lost 4 wickets in death overs. That's one of the reasons why they
yeah.
just went at seven. And entire game and the momentum was changed when they were just striking at 7 runs per over in the last 5 overs. That's
yeah.
something which brought Afghanistan back into the game. But if you look at Afghanistan, their middle overs is something which really
Yeah,
derailed
so
them.
I
If
think
they had
the first wicket in that middle overs is the one that I think it was a run out. Right after that is where they lost those wickets in a hum, where all of a sudden they started
Yeah,
throwing the
yeah, they
wickets away.
lost
Where
three
Mohammad
wickets in
Nabi,
1 over itself, and
uh,
I think it all started with the Maxwell run out. I think
yeah,
otherwise
the first
Afghanistan
wicket
were running
there
away with the
is
game.
Maxwell, and then all of a sudden things just changed because they were actually doing a good job in that in the middle of overs, even though they started off a little slowly, but they were able to come back and get that run rate of 6.44. But the reason why they ended up at only 6.44 is because that again in the middle of like in that 9 over period again towards the end they lost a lot of wickets in that Zampa
Yeah, I think
and
they were
Hazelwood over
99.
they lost three
Jaren, they were
wickets.
99 at the end of 13 overs, so they needed just 70 of the last seven with
Yeah,
I think 8 wickets in hand. So
yeah,
that
yeah.
that Naib run out actually triggered the collapse, and they lost
it
four
did, it
wickets
did.
in the next two
I
overs
mean, that's
itself.
where you had the Zampa over where three wickets fell. One was a run out,
Yeah,
and then two
that was
wickets
a
that
run out.
Zampa took.
That's exactly what we're talking about.
Yeah,
And that's
that's
something
the
which
over
really
things
derailed
changed.
them. And I also think on the other side, for someone like Rashid Khan to be batting very low down the order is not justice to his ability, what he's got. Because if you look Rashid Khan, the kind of ability he's got to really strike the ball hard and to really change the match on its course. If you look at this, what Afghanistan has done in batting, they have Rashid Khan has done the best among them. 29% of the runs scored, just 18% of the balls faced. He scored, I think, 23 ball, 44, 48, and he was striking the ball pretty well through the course of it. And Gulbadin Naib is one standout performer there as well in terms of the number of runs and the number of balls faced, in terms of strike rate as well. How do you think Rashid Khan being put at number 8? Because even for his franchise cricket, he bats number 6, number 7 at times, and he's got the ability in these conditions. In Adelaide, nobody knows this ground better than Rashid Khan also. So, Niman, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think especially because they were playing in Adelaide, I think Afghanistan could have brought in Rashid Khan a bit earlier, probably at number 6 or number 7. But you understand that they trusted, they had very experienced middle order, barring Rasuli probably. I think apart from Rasuli, I think Mohammad Nabi, after Gulbadin Naib came in at number 4, Mohammad Nabi came in at number 5, and then there was Najibullah Zadran. So probably
Yeah.
the only where Rashid Khan could have come in at number 7 for them, but that did not really affect because they lost 4 or 5 wickets in a heap. So he was to come in at that stage anyway. But having said that, I think these are games where you expect your senior pros to come good for you. You expect Najibullah Zadran, you expect Mohammad Nabi to do the job for you with the bat, because Nabi in particular knows these Australian conditions. He has been around the BBL for Melbourne Renegades for a long time now, and I think this was the stage where senior players could have taken the responsibility on themselves, something that Rashid Khan did. He understood the conditions. He knew that Australians were trying to bowl slower deliveries, especially Marcus Stoinis in that last over. He was just trying to bowl slower deliveries. He was not going for that Yorker. He was not attempting that Yorker. Also, I think Marcus Stoinis is a very nervous 20th over bowler, because
Yeah.
in, re- in recent in recent times we have seen Australia hand over the duty of bowling the 20th over to Marcus Stoinis a lot,
Yeah.
and I think that does not actually help him. When you have Cameron Green bowling at least economically from the other end, I think Australia should change
Yeah,
their
but then
approach and
Australia
trust
did
somebody
try
like a
Cameron
Cameron Green
Green.
to
I
do
think
the
it was
job
in
for
the
them.
India match where they tried Cameron Green, right? In the
Yeah,
Indian
they could have
series.
possibly tried Cameron Green instead of Marcus Stoinis. It's very
I
surprising.
mean,
Yesterday
I
was
think
very
the reason why
weak.
I did not go for Cameron Green for me, I thought the same thing. But then what I think about it is the fact that Marcus Stoinis had a better slower delivery, and if you saw their strategy, I think Matthew Wade had decided that they're going to ball slower deliveries more often than not, and they
But it
wanted
could have
Rashid
backfired
Khan to
if
be the
Rashid
one to
Khan
bring
would
the
have
power
got
in.
hold of one other delivery as well. I think the game would have been over, and Afghanistan would have won, and
That's when
He
I
was
Matthew Wade
felt
would
just
have.
that
one
in the
boundary away.
19th over, I
Ultimately,
remember
Phil
this.
was just one hit away. And if that
Yeah,
run
in
out
the
wouldn't have
19th over, I remember there was this full toss that was bowled by Josh Hazelwood, where Rashid Khan was trying
Rashid
to
Khan missed
smack
it.
the ball, he fell down. I
Yeah.
thought that was the match for Australia because that was the ball. If that ball had traveled, I think it would have shaken Hazelwood's confidence. He would have probably found another boundary in that over itself. But
Yeah,
that not
they
going
did.
in,
Right
and
after that, there was just 6 and a 4. But then, if
Yeah,
that
yeah,
also
but I
would
think
have
it
come,
was
this
too
would have been
little, too
different.
late because 22 of the last over is a bit
no,
too
I mean,
much,
if that had
especially.
Australia, they won by 4 runs. So in perspective, if you think about it, that six could have really changed the momentum of the game because
Definitely.
it could have been become 16 to win of six, and the way Marcus
And
Stoinis
you
was
could see
bowling,
how upset Rashid Khan was with himself because
yeah,
he scored a
yeah.
fabulous 22 ball, 21, 22 ball, 48 run knock. Even though, even after that, he was upset. I think at this ground, you could have probably tried on, implemented Rashid Khan as a pinch hitter at number 5, number 6. And this is now starting to be a concern for Mohammad Nabi with the bat because I don't remember the last time Mohammad Nabi came good for Afghanistan with the bat. And this has been going on
Yeah.
for a long time because Afghanistan with the bat, I think early on, like not early on, I mean in the recent times, they have dependent on the youngster Rahmanullah Gurbaz to provide them with a
Yeah.
explosive start, and then you have Najibullah Zadran in the middle order who sort of takes understanding of the things and goes after the bowling. You also have somebody like a Ibrahim Zadran, but I think this is one of those days where I think you guys will be very happy because an anchor player consuming way too many. If you can have that ball versus run chart, you can probably see that these are sort of the days where when the anchor of the innings is not actually getting going for the team, it actually goes on to affect the team. I think, yeah, Ibrahim Zadran over here played 28% of the deliveries and scored only
Yeah.
15% of the runs. He's their
Mhm.
anchor player, so he had to go through the innings and not get dismissed in that Zampa over. I think that was the game itself, because if he
That
could
was.
have probably got going for another 2-3 overs, he could have found some sort of touch and
I
could have
think
at least scored some boundaries
especially
because
if
he was sitting at the other end and watching Gulbadin Naib take on the bowlers.
I think that's
Absolutely
where
right.
I felt, instead of Rasuli, they should have sent in Rashid Khan because I understand
Definitely.
like Mohammad Nabi, till Mohammad Nabi, I can still understand because Mohammad Nabi's done it for you at least, and
Mm.
they've done it, he's done it for you many times before, and could have been his day, could not have been his day. At least you have to give that a try. I mean, if we could have been criticizing, Afghanistan the same way, and if maybe
Yeah.
Rashid Khan was sent ahead and he failed. But
I
given
mean,
that,
that's something
I
which
think
they should have been
Rasuli is
more
someone who's
proactive at least on.
yeah, Rasuli is someone who's more inexperienced at this stage to come into play in a very difficult match against the defending champions. And Rashid Khan in
But
number
you know
seven
what?
position
His
has a striker
batting,
of
I
160.
wouldn't really fault the batting position where Rasuli was batting in it. But you know what? I would have still preferred Rashid Khan coming at number 6. You put in Najibullah Zadran at number 6. It didn't make me any sense because Najibullah Zadran also takes a little bit of time to get going. But at that time, you needed 10 runs per over when Najibullah Zadran walked in. And what did you? You just got out for
But the
naught. You
thing
did
Yeah.
with
not give any
Najibullah
effect.
Zadran is he has won Afghanistan many games in the past, and he has been their most dependable middle order batter for the longest period of time because Mohammad Nabi has not got going, and then there was Asghar Afghan who retired, and then came the plethora of youngsters who are
But
trying to
I
stake a
feel
claim
two
in that
things.
middle order.
but
You're
I think
putting him
yeah,
at
the
number
the
6
amount
is
of
not a right
balls
ideal
that
way
were
for him.
left, if you had sent in Rashid Khan, I think he would have he could have been someone who disrupted the bowling as well. He's someone who is very good with all. I think both pace and spin. It wouldn't have mattered to him, and you never know. He could have taken down Zampa.
Look at how Rashid Khan's strike rate over here. He's batted
Yeah.
at strike rate of 208. He's scored 48 runs, and he was the
Of
difference.
23 balls, yeah.
Ultimately, if you look for Afghanistan's team, he was the one. I know Gurbaz got to a very
He's
good
had
start.
the best strike rate in the game. Even
Yeah, he
Australian
did. He did.
players haven't had that kind of strike rate.
And remember why you see this innings progression. When you look at this innings progression, why
Yeah.
did they go at 14.5 towards the latter half? It is Rashid Khan. His effect. He almost did it. He almost did it. He was just one hit away, and even in the last over, if you'd have connected one more slower ball for Marcus Stoinis, because it was very clear Marcus Stoinis was not going for any pace on ball. He was going for
Yeah.
every ball which he was going to ball. He was going for a slow ball. If you'd have connected one more six, match would have been totally different, and we would have been talking about Afghanistan's victory. But that's how the game goes. Because now we've got a few questions I think which we should take. Especially Kapil has put in some points. He says, would you believe defending champions are out of the World Cup, that too in the home? They're not out of the World Cup. They still have hopes, especially when it comes to Sri Lanka defeating England, but the chances are very mere. You could see from the face of Australia that they were all worried when Rashid was batting. Of course, they all were, because Rashid was batting in that kind of a form and you don't know what will happen. And that's what you get with Rashid Khan. Even you have seen in the IPL, I think, Jaran, you'll be knowing better. Against Chennai Super Kings, he played an innings like this where he took on Chris Jordan for fun. So, and he's done quite a few times in IPLs, not just once. Even against Sunrisers, I remember he went against Marco Jansen to take the game home. And Michael says if Afghanistan would have won, it could have been as Sri Lanka was India semis. Yeah, that was a possibility. It was. Definitely it was. If Sri Lanka would have defeated England tomorrow and if Australia would have lost, it was India versus Sri Lanka semi final. Who saw that coming? But yeah,
Provided India wins against Zimbabwe.
yes, provided India wins against Zimbabwe. So that's the first stick which India will have to do. Yeah, there's something which I also had in the mind. We've seen often with Afghanistan, Afghanistan have come close to winning so many matches. If you talk about 2016 World Cup, they defeated the probable champions of that World Cup, which was West Indies, eventual champions of the World Cup. And 2018, the Asia Cup, they drew the match against India. 2019 World Cup, they came very close to defeating India. If not for Shami's hat trick, it could have been Afghanistan yet again. 2020, 2021 in that World Cup, they came very close to Pakistan. They've come close to Pakistan on a couple of occasions where they
Yeah.
really took Pakistan. They went on a dogfight with Pakistan on the field and off the field. So they've come very close to Pakistan on those occasions. But now here once again, against Australia, possibly it could have been their game, and against England as well. They gave a fight for 112, whatever they were defending. Your thoughts on Afghanistan? What is really making them not to cross over the line? Is it inexperience, or is it just that they're not feeling comfortable when they're nearing that target?
I think it's panic, to be very honest. I mean, we saw it today as well. Afghanistan were in the driver's seat when Gulbuddin Naib and Ibrahim were batting, and you felt like they could really take the game away. And Australian faces were worried, as Kapil rightly mentioned. And I think that's where you felt, and especially because they were so close to that 106 mark, which by the way was what Australia had to restrict Afghanistan today. And when they were nearing that, they were around 90-95 runs. And that's where, when one wicket fell, when Gulbuddin Naib fell, you shouldn't have really gone after the bowling. I mean, at least when two wickets fell after that, probably someone like a Mohammad Nabi, whom I really expected to settle, I mean, let the tide settle down, maybe play Zampa out, Hazelwood out, and go after some of the bowling, like someone like maybe Marcus Stoinis, for instance, or someone else who hasn't done as well. And that's where I felt they really miscalculated. They went after Josh Hazelwood right after the Zampa over. And this is something that I think is not inexperience, it's just plain panic. And we've seen this happen as well in the Asia Cup. In the Asia Cup match, where they must should have won that match. I think any team in the world at that stage would have won the match. But
Yeah,
again, the bowler, I think it was Fazal Farooqi, who panicked and he balled two full tosses straight up to a tail ender in the search for a Yorker. And again, that again was a mistake. That again was panic. So that's where I feel, even in India's case, for instance, when they were playing the match against India, they were going pretty easily, and India really needed to get wickets, and they gifted 2 to 3 wickets again to India in that match. I remember
yeah.
one where, for instance, I don't remember the batter, but he charged Chahal down, who was bowling really well, and MS
Mm.
Dhoni did the rest, and then from there they really never got going. So these are the kind of moments where they seem to really let go of the plot, and that's something that Afghanistan really needs to improve, because they've got the skills in them. They came so close. If you look at the innings progression, you would see that in on an average, both the teams were very close. I mean, when they did well in the death overs, Australia didn't do well in the death overs, and
Yeah.
both of that is because of Afghanistan's capabilities. So when you can bring these world-beating teams to their knees, I think Afghanistan should now start learning to kill the game off rather than allowing these teams to sneak back in.
I mean, something which they will have in their mind going ahead, because I know it's a golden generation for Afghanistan, and you're seeing a lot of players come through. It's just not Rashid and Mujib anymore. You have a Gurbaz, you
And
have
I
a
think it was
Najibullah.
Rashid Khan that got stumped out to Chahal in that World Cup as well. So I think some of the senior players, especially, I totally agree with what Jedin said. They have been choking, they have been panicking at the wrong stage, and some of the senior players will have to step up and calm things down and not aggravate the matter, which they are doing. Most of the times, the senior players are coming in. You expect somebody like a Nabi to come in and settle things down, wait for 1-2 overs, and then launch the attack rather than trying
Mhm.
to go for the attack and lose his wicket as well and trigger a collapse. I think this is something that Afghanistan will really have to work on. And I think the
Yeah.
second thing that they will have to really work on is their batting, because most often than not, the bowlers do a perfectly good job of restricting the opposition, or probably of restricting the opposition in general. But the batsmen have just not been good enough to post a target that is challenging enough, or probably when they are chasing, they panic at the wrong time, they don't get the job done, and then they can't cross the line, they don't get over the line. And I think this is the golden generation, and if it has to be done in ICC events, then it has to be in recent times as well, because this team will soon, not soon, I think it's a team of youngsters as well. It's a golden generation. I think it will go on for the next 4 or 5 years, but
I
you
mean, they're
won't
getting
have
players
Mohammad Nabi leading the
every
side.
every under 19 World Cup. They are able to find stars, and that's a good thing for
Yeah.
Afghanistan cricket. They're able to find
I
talents, and
think maybe this
talents
is
which
where,
are really
if
good.
you win that one match, maybe it's one upset, once Afghanistan wins that one match from
Yeah.
this kind of a position, then I think it'll become a habit
I
for
think
them,
I
because
think
that's never
I'll
happened.
relate
That's
them
where I
to
think they're
Indian
panicking.
women's team in finals. They have come very close on numerous occasions. They're not been able to cross the line because they've not had that experience.
Yeah.
Maybe with more of these stars playing in more of these leagues, it's just not Rashid Mujib
Also, I
and
mean, they are
Gurbaz.
attracting some of the best coaching talents out there. I mean, Umar Gul, Jonathan Trott, all of these players, when they were players, rather they were one of the best in the world, and now they are out there in Afghanistan in dressing room. They are the ones who have, I mean, very much. I mean, credit has to be given to Umar Gul because
Yeah,
he's someone who's transformed their pace bowling attack. I mean, when Afghanistan really came burst onto the scene, is all about their spinners. But
yeah,
now today's innings, for example, today's, if you look at the bowling graph that we've shown you, you would
Five
see
wickets
that
from the Pacers.
most of the wickets have come from the Pacers. And the spinners
yeah,
have taken 2 wickets, if I'm not wrong. Rashid took one, and Rahman took one. Rest of it
yeah.
has
You can
come
see that.
from their fast bowlers. So
Yeah, absolutely.
that is
Fast bowlers
impressive.
have taken 5 wickets and one apiece with Rashid and Mujib, and both are expensive. And compared to fast bowlers, both the
Yeah,
spinners were
yeah.
slightly
I
expensive.
mean,
And
especially
Fazlur Farooq
Mujib.
was
I
there.
mean, Rashid still did a decent job, but Mujib was pretty expensive. But
Yeah,
look at the
but
fast bowlers right there.
I think they'll be very pleased with that. And I was always very shocked why couldn't Afghanistan produce good fast bowlers, because they share borders with Pakistan and they always have these bowlers, players who are very strong, physically very strong. They have genetically, they're very gifted, I would say so. And you have to say that. Which genes do play a part, especially when it comes to fast bowling. And you've seen that in the when it comes to Peshawar, when it comes to Quetta, these players are genetically very gifted. When it comes to Rawalpindi as well, these players are genetically gifted. That's one of the reasons why you have Shoaib Akhtar, you have the likes of Shaheen Shah Afridi, and all these lads come through. They're naturally very strong, and all what they have to do is to come to this level and gain more muscle mass and to ball fast. But Afghanistan have never done that, which I was pretty shocked. But I think now going ahead, possibly they can have talent scouts looking at these players in local areas, seeing how they go about, because now they've got the best, they've got a good system in place as well. Though they're I don't know about their domestic structure, because of a lot of political tensions in their country. The domestic structure is kind of what do I say? It is disjointed, it is disoriented at this very point, is what I'm able to gather. But still, they're able to find talented players. They're able to find a lot of good under 19 players. For example, Kais Ahmed did not play in this entire tournament, but he has done exceedingly well in BBL. He did
And
it very
also,
good.
anyway, you have to understand that Afghanistan do not play their home matches in Afghanistan. So I think the
Yeah.
political turmoil and whatever is going on in their country, the
Yeah.
cricketers at least are not really affected by it, because yeah, mentally obviously you are affected by it, but probably when it comes to being in the situation, playing in the game, I think in that scenario, I think they are. At least they have some relief that they don't have to focus on that, because I think they play their international home matches in India. I think in some place in Dehradun, I guess it's
They
a
play in
stadium in
Dehradun,
Dehradun.
they play in Noida as well.
Yeah, they play in Noida as well. And also, I think if you talk about domestic cricket, they all this Kais Ahmed and all, they play in most of the leagues. They play in the Canada T20 league. They play in the PSL, and also some of the T10 leagues in UAE as well. So I think all these players are nurtured through these T10 and T20 competitions, and they have lots of domestic tournaments, not in their own country, but they take part they go for franchises and they take part in franchise cricket. Is
A
what I want to
lot
say.
of them go to Australia as net ballers, and then they get
Yeah,
then they get capture the eyeballs. For example, Kais Ahmed started off being in the BBL, then he captured the eyes of the Afghanistan selectors in the Under 19 World Cup. He had a decent run in the Under 19 World Cup. I think Afghanistan played the semi final, if I'm not wrong, in the Under 19 World Cup recently. No, they did not. They came
no.
up against England. I think they played the semi final, if
I,
I'm not wrong. I'm not able to gather it.
Semi-final or quarter-final? I don't exactly remember. I
They
think
played one of them.
probably
But let's
semi-final because it was creating a buzz at that point.
Yeah, it was. I think so. And remember, KS Ahmed was one of the players. Yeah, now let's look at that breakdown ball by ball, right? Where the entire thing shifted. Now, if you look, you can understand the number of boundaries scored is very similar because the number of maximums really kind of even things out with the number of it's very similar.
Yeah,
But number
it's
of dot
pretty
balls
close.
is
Yeah,
I think number of dot
I
balls is
think
what
I
makes the
think it's
difference
a
over here.
game. It was a game of very fine margins, and I think this ball by ball breakdown shows it. I mean, there
Yeah.
is hardly anything to separate the two teams, and I think those
One,
four
one
dot
maybe
balls that
one
Afghanistan
four
played extra.
and one
Yeah,
four and maybe a couple of dot balls less would have really changed the game. And that's
yeah,
what
yeah, yeah.
this
Just a couple
really
of dot
speaks
balls
volumes
and
of how
one
close
boundary
the
could
game
have
was.
sealed the game for them.
yeah.
This ball by ball breakdown really opens as to how close this game was. One might say Afghanistan versus Australia. How close can it be? Ultimately, Australia won it, but then this really shows it was a very close game. Rather, if you look at it in the paper, and
I
it
think
was one
Harsha
hit
Bhogle
away.
mentioned this. I mean, at the start of the game, Australia would have been thinking we'll have to go out there,
Yeah,
score 200,
yeah,
and think about by
Yeah,
how many runs we would win. And suddenly, with three balls remaining, Australia are thinking, how do we defend this? So
yeah,
that is what
absolutely.
Afghanistan made them do. And I
yeah.
think with 17 needed of three balls, Rashid Khan hitting that ball for a six, the third
Oh,
last ball
and
for a six.
I mean, some of the
Yeah,
shots he plays.
that would have actually caused a lot of panic
We
in the
saw, I think
Australian
the
camp.
camera straight away panned at Mitch Marsh. He was biting all his nails off. I hope Mitch Marsh has some nails surviving on his
Yeah.
hands because
You know,
that
at
was a
least
nail
he could have
biting
got
finish.
one more maximum after that first one which he hit of Marcus Stoinis. It could have been a super over also. Imagine that
Yeah,
happening because he hit the last ball for a
yeah,
four. He would have possibly predicted that, but ultimately, it was all Rashid Khan alone which he had to do that. If he had one support from maybe a Rasuli, if Rasuli would have hit 1-6 on the other end before that, this would have been a different game. But ultimately,
I
that's
mean,
what we
Rasuli
say.
tried. I mean, you only expect this from an youngster to sort of step up and do give it your best. And I think he did the right thing in the last over. Also, I think he was a bit slow to get off the tracks. I think if he could have gone straight away, I think he would have made that single as well. And I think that single could have also somehow affected the mindset as well. Needing 20 of 6 and 21 of 6 is two different things. With four boundaries, you can win the game with 20 because two fours, two sixes, and the game is done. But with 21, you will still go for a super over.
It was tough.
So
It
yeah,
was tough. It
it's
was
those
tough.
things. Yeah, at the end of the day, it's those things.
And
Very
man,
very little margin of error.
imagine if that was not a run out as well. It would have come down very close. That
yeah.
Rasuli's thing was
Definitely,
not a
yeah.
run out. This could have been different as well. Rashid Khan would have been more prominent in taking the doubles. He would have been more confident enough to go for the singles also. And this could have been a different game, but that's what it is. Ultimately, you'll have just one winner, and it had to be Afghanistan. It had to be Australia, and Afghanistan had to go the other way, as we always see of Afghanistan. But this will give
Yeah,
them a lot of
Afghanistan has
learning.
always won hearts, but I think if this goes on, I think this is the only thing that they'll win because they'll have to really work on their batting and they'll have to definitely step up
Yeah,
when
it's
the
time
time
they
demands
step
it.
up. We give them that leeway. We give them that period where you really, what is it, a period where you treat them as a team who are just coming up. It's okay for them to lose games, but at this point,
It is
they've
not
got players
actually
who play
able
across.
because they were one of the teams that got automatic qualification ahead of West Indies and Sri Lanka. So Afghanistan are in the top 8 right now. So them defeating Australia, who are I think placed at number 5 or number 6 in the
It
T20I
shouldn't be a
rankings.
surprise. It shouldn't be an
It shouldn't be
upset.
a surprise. It
And
shouldn't
given
at
the
all be a
format,
surprise, especially after the performance they pulled off in Asia Cup against Sri Lanka. the first game itself. I think it should never be a surprise right now. And I think when Afghanistan is playing against Australia in T20 internationals, probably not at Australia's home ground, it shouldn't be considered an upset as well. I think if they would have been playing
I mean,
in
I think
UAE
this
or yeah.
format really evens out a lot of things, right? If it was a
Yeah,
one-day format, you could have at
definitely.
least said Afghanistan defeating Australia is a big deal. But this format, top eight teams, anybody can defeat anyone on the given day. So that's how
Mhm.
it is, regardless of you're number one or not. That's how close this T20 format has brought teams because if you have two bad overs, other team is on top. You saw that with India, Bangladesh as well. Why Bangladesh came very close to defeating India and why Afghanistan came very close to defeating Australia. It's a format which has to do a lot. Number of overs reduced, the lower ranked team gets a better position to defeat you. And Afghanistan, it's high time they pull up their socks and really put up some performance in the world stage. We all know we have felt sympathetic to this team as to how they've had conditions back home, how they're coming up. It's a beautiful story in itself as to how they have come up as a cricket team. But now it's time for them to really go out there, challenge the big boys, get some wins under the belt. Maybe the next World Cup in 2024 will be a big one because you have a lot of players from their team who are playing in the Caribbean Premier League, and it'll be better suited for them than the conditions in Australia because the spinners will come into play in West Indies. You have seen that time and time again. Likes of Rashid Mujib, Qais Ahmed is someone who I'm expecting to be developed by then, so he's going to be really effective in those conditions as well. So I'm hoping that they come very good by then. But now we'll talk about New Zealand versus Ireland, which got over earlier today. An interesting game, right? Because especially when it comes to Ireland, it could have been upset for New Zealand. They could have been possibly knocked out today if you look at the end of the result. New Zealand could have been possibly knocked out because if Ireland would have chased that score down, it was all curtains for New Zealand. But then New Zealand ballers stepped up once again, likes of Ish Sodhi and Sandner pulling the plugs. Sandner has played up 8 wickets in this World Cup and all against right-handers. That's another thing which we'll be talking about. But Ish Sodhi on the other hand is the leading critic for New Zealand this year, 25 wickets. That's what he's picked up this year. And Kane Williamson, he came out playing a knock of intent. He was an intent merchant today for the liking. He scored 50 of 32 balls, and something which we all were criticizing him for. We were talking about axing him as well, but today he shut everyone of us up because this is a Kane Williamson which we all know. In IPL, has done that time and time again. Maybe he felt a lot more comfortable in these conditions, and he was striking the ball pretty well. He was striking the ball pretty long as well.
Yeah,
Definitely.
I mean, what he did really well today was, today's pitch was not an easy pitch to bat on by any margins, especially in the first game. Because in the second game, at least under the lights, it became a little bit more skiddy. And I think that's the reason probably why, the slow balls didn't have that much effect as it had in the first inning. But in the morning match, it was very dry, and Adelaide played a completely different way than what we saw in India, Bangladesh. And that I mean, especially the Irish bowlers, they kept their lengths very tight, did not allow any sort of room to the New Zealand batters because remember Adelaide Oval has very short square boundaries, and if you give any width on either side of the wicket, you will get smashed, and that is where you really saw the Irish bowlers keeping their temperament and their calm, and they kept making sure that the New Zealand batters had to come out with something innovative to get going. And also that's the reason why once Finn Allen fell, both Devon Conway and Kane Williamson really struggled. But credit to Kane Williamson, he really changed the game after the 30. I think the 22nd ball. That's when he really started smashing it. I think the first 22 balls he scored 31. Then again he scored 31 of the next 12 deliveries. That's how the breakdown was. And I mean that's how he plays, and that's what I think. He never got to that stage. We were always seeing him play, set up a foundation, but he never got to that transition stage that we know Kane Williamson can be. But today, yeah, today he did. Although having said that, this is against an Irish team, a bowling unit which is very very decent, but you cannot expect them to have the same level
Remember,
that
they
some
had a
other
bowler who picked up a hat trick
opponents.
today, so I think we have to give Irish bowling some
No,
bit
I
of
mean we
credit.
have to give them credit
And not
definitely.
just a bowler taking a hat trick, it is the bowler with the most wickets in this calendar year in T20 internationals. 39
Exactly.
wickets is a commendable feat. Joshua Little was
And
very
he was able to
narrowly
swing the
missed in
ball
our
in
fantasy
the
teams as a vice
19th, in
captain.
the 20th over. He
I
was able to
think
swing the ball in the 20th
Jerin
over.
at some point suggested to keep Joshua Little as our vice captain in the New Zealand versus Ireland encounter, but then
Hmm.
finally we scrapped it off because we thought two New Zealand players would do the job for them. But what a
Yeah.
story it has been for Joshua Little, and not just that, for this Ireland team to be the first team to have two hat tricks in T20 World Cup.
Yeah.
Curtis
Not
Camper
India,
was
not Australia, not Pakistan. It is a team
And we've had three
which
hat
did
tricks,
not
if I'm
get
not
automatic
wrong, this
qualification.
year's World Cup. We've had three hat tricks this year's World Cup, right?
no, two hat
And
tricks. One is Karthik Mayappan and one is Joshua Little.
yeah, two hat tricks, correct. And
No,
all of them
I
have
mean
been.
the only team to take two hat tricks in T20 World Cup is Ireland. No other
No,
team
no,
has
no.
taken
My point
two.
was something else, Sanjimani.
Yeah,
Like I accept your point. My point is being these two are associate nations, or rather not
yeah.
associate
Associate
nations.
nations doing the job
An
for them,
Irish team,
definitely.
which is probably not the most highly rated, and then there is the UAE team, and they have taken wickets against full member nations. So this is
Yep.
the beauty of this year's World Cup.
कुमार से दिनेश कार्तिक को
Definitely.
टीम से बाहर फेंको, सड़ा दिया। कुमार बाहर तो फेंक सकता है, पर अभी टाइम भी बहुत लेट हो गया, क्योंकि जितना बैक किया दिनेश कार्तिक को भी बहुत ही कम बॉल मिला इस वर्ल्ड कप में, आप देखिएगा तो। पहले मैच में खेला था, पहले मैच में तो उसको फिनिश करना चाहिए था, उस वक़्त नहीं किया। नीदरलैंड्स के साथ तो बैटिंग नहीं किया, साउथ अफ्रीका के साथ एक अपॉर्च्युनिटी मिला था, उस वक़्त अच्छा करना चाहिए था, और पिछले मैच में रन आउट भी हुआ। पिछले मैच में अच्छा दिख रहा था, मतलब एक बाउंड्री भी मारा था, एक सिंगल भी मारा, और स्ट्राइक रेट भी उतना कम भी नहीं था। पर देखने आया कि दिनेश कार्तिक खेलेगा कि नहीं, पर ऋषभ पंत को भी ट्राई कर सकता है, क्योंकि जब आप इंग्लैंड के खिलाफ आएगा, आपको आदिल रशीद को टैकल करने के लिए एक बैटर चाहिए ही, और न्यूजीलैंड के खिलाफ भी जब आप फाइनल में जाएगा तो 2 स्पिनर्स हैं जो बॉल को बाहर लेके जा रहे हैं, और सैंडनर का रिकॉर्ड लेफ्ट हैंडर्स के खिलाफ काफ़ी खराब है, और ये सब मैचअप्स को ध्यान में रख के शायद दिनेश कार्तिक को ड्रॉप कर सकता है, और टीम को भी बैलेंस मिल सकता है, क्योंकि एक लेफ्ट हैंडर तो चाहिए, क्योंकि अक्षर पटेल वो बैलेंस नहीं दे रहे हैं इस वक्त। ऑस्ट्रेलियन कंडीशन में उसके पास बैकफुट गेम नहीं है, क्योंकि अक्षर पटेल का फ्रंट फुट प्रेस तो ऐसा है कि वो फ्रंट फुट में पहला जाता है, फिर बैकफुट के आने का कोशिश करता है, और उस वक्त तक तो बॉल चले जाता है। ऑस्ट्रेलियन कंडीशंस में वो नहीं कर सकता है। अक्षर पटेल मुंबई में खेलने में और एडिलेड में खेलने में बहुत फर्क है, और यही है फर्क, और इसी कारण मैं बोल रहा हूँ कि ऋषभ पंत को ट्राई कर सकता है दिनेश कार्तिक की जगह। ये भी नहीं है कि दिनेश कार्तिक का कीपिंग भी एक मसला रहा है। आप पूरा
हाँ,
वर्ल्ड कप देखिए, क्योंकि पिछले मैच में लिटन दास को 2 बार ड्रॉप किया, क्योंकि वो कैच वो ले सकता था, और पहला वाला कैच मैं बोल सकता हूँ कि 50-50 था। सेकंड कैच अभी इस जनरेशन में एक कीपर के लिए एक नॉर्मल कैच हो सकता है, क्योंकि डाइव कैच फर्स्टली भी नहीं था, और हम देखा है कि ऋषभ पंत बहुत ही
ऑल्सो
बहुत
आई मीन ये भी ऐसा भी लग रहा है कि दिनेश कार्तिक शायद ऑस्ट्रेलिया के बाउंस को काउंटर नहीं कर पा रहे कीपिंग स्किल्स के हिसाब से, क्योंकि अश्विन के साथ जो जब वो दो ड्रॉप कैच, आई थिंक एक ड्रॉप कैच और एक मिस स्टंपिंग, वहां पे अगर देखोगे आप तो वो अगर उसकी फुटेज में देखोगे तो दिनेश कार्तिक के ना इधर आई मीन रिस्ट पे लग रही है बॉल, ना उसके ग्लव्स में नहीं जा रही, रिस्ट पे लग रही है, जिसकी वजह
हाँ।
से ऐसा लग रहा है कि वो बाउंस काउंटर नहीं कर पा रहा, कलेक्ट नहीं कर पा रहा है बॉल ढंग से टाइम पे।
और हम सबको पता है कि ऋषभ पंत का रिकॉर्ड ऑस्ट्रेलिया में काफ़ी अच्छा है, जिस तरीके जो बैटिंग किया हुआ है, और ऐसा ऐसा देखिए कि सेमीफाइनल में एक ऐसा सिचुएशन आ गया कि आपको काउंटर अटैक करना है एक लेफ्ट हैंडर के साथ, और ऋषभ पंत को डिप्लॉय करना पड़ेगा ही पड़ेगा, क्योंकि एडिलेड में खेलेगा शायद आप इंग्लैंड के खिलाफ, और एक एक बाउंड्री तो काफ़ी छोटा भी है, और आदिल रशीद को काउंटर करने के लिए कि एक लेफ्ट हैंडर चाहिए होगा, और ऋषभ
स्पेशली
पंत
आई
को
थिंक
खिलाना है तो कल ही खिलाना
जब
पड़ेगा,
आप
परसों खिलाना
स्पिनर्स
पड़ेगा।
को खेलोगे, आज भी देखा कि जब भी स्पिनर्स को खेलोगे तो आप स्वीप और रिवर्स स्वीप बहुत यूज करोगे, एंड ऋषभ पंत या एक ऐसा प्लेयर हो सकता है जब बॉल अंदर आएगी तो शायद उसको वो आसानी पड़े कि उस डायरेक्शन में वो बॉल खेल सके, क्योंकि एज अ स्पिनर आपको। हाँ,
हाँ, मैं दिनेश कार्तिक का फ़ैन हूँ, पर ऐसा नहीं है कि अब अभी आपको टीम का ज़रूरी देखना पड़ेगा। जब जडेजा था, आप दिनेश कार्तिक को खिला सकता था, पर अब जडेजा भी नहीं है, तो जडेजा नहीं है तो आप किसके पास जाना पड़ेगा? ऋषभ पंत के साथ ही जाना पड़ेगा, क्योंकि आपको ये लेफ्ट हैंडर चाहिए ही चाहिए इस कंडीशन में, क्योंकि आप साउथ अफ्रीका के खिलाफ भी, आप साउथ अफ्रीकन बॉलर्स को एक ही लाइन में बॉल करने दिया, और वो लाइन बिगड़ना चाहिए। कभी-कभी ना टेस्ट मैच में भी हम एक बात बहुत सुनता है कि लाइन बिगड़ने के लिए एक लेफ्ट हैंडर को आगे भेजा, और ऋषभ पंत को हम बहुत बार नंबर 5 पे भेजा है टेस्ट मैचेस में, इंग्लैंड में भी, साउथ अफ्रीका में भी, ऑस्ट्रेलिया में भी। यही कारण, क्योंकि लाइन बिगड़ना चाहिए एक एक बॉलर का, क्योंकि लेफ्ट हैंड राइट हैंड कॉम्बिनेशन उस वक़्त बैटिंग क्रीज में रहता है तो काफ़ी मुश्किल होता है बॉलर के लिए एक ही लाइन में बॉलिंग करना, और यही ऋषभ पंत का भी खासियत है कि वो पुल शॉट अच्छा खेल सकता है, कट शॉट भी अच्छा खेल सकता है, उसका कीपिंग काफ़ी आगे आया है पिछले 2 साल से, और इसी कारण ऋषभ पंत को ट्राई करना चाहिए। ट्राई करना है तो फाइनल्स में ज़िम्बाब्वे के खिलाफ खिलाओ, और देखो कैसे खेलता है। अपॉर्च्युनिटी नहीं दिएगा तो कैसा पता चलेगा, फाइनल में उतारेगा तो क्या ऋषभ पंत को भी प्रेशर ही आएगा। ऋषभ पंत अच्छा प्लेयर है, और बिग मैच का भी बहुत बड़ा प्लेयर है, क्योंकि ऐसा बड़ा सिचुएशन में हमेशा ऋषभ पंत स्टेप अप किया हुआ है। जी संदीप मानी,
मेरा
आपको भी कुछ
मानना
ऐड
थोड़ा सा अलग है, मतलब हाँ, मतलब सारे
बोल
पॉइंट्स बहुत
दीजिए।
वैलिड है, लेकिन अब हम लोग एक ऐसे स्टेज पे आ चुके हैं कि इधर जाके एक्सपेरिमेंट करना मेरे लिए, टीम कॉम्बिनेशन को ज्यादा इधर उधर करना मेरे लिए सही नहीं होगा, क्योंकि इंडिया के पास रोल
हाँ जी।
क्लैरिटी है। दिनेश कार्तिक को बताया गया है कि आपका जॉब है, आपको फिनिशिंग में जाके, अंत में जाके टीम को एक्सेलेरेट करवाना है। वो दिनेश कार्तिक इस टूर्नामेंट में अभी तक नहीं कर पाए हैं। पिछले गेम में हम लोगों ने देखा था कि वो शुरुआत में कर रहे थे, मतलब शॉट्स लगा रहे थे, बट फिर अनफॉर्चुनेटली रन आउट हो गए। और हम लोग एक क्वालिटी प्लेयर को अगर मौका देते रहे तो हम लोगों ने देखा है कि सफलता हमेशा मिलती है, क्योंकि ये लोग के पास बहुत
क्या
क्वालिटी है।
पता
एक
दिनेश कार्तिक फाइनल में आके सबसे बेस्ट इनिंग्स खेले।
डेफिनेटली, और मैं आई वोंट पुट इट anything against Dinesh Karthik, like Dinesh Karthik can't do, because I definitely think he's going to bounce back. We have seen quality players bounce back. KL Rahul ने पिछले गेम में अर्धशतक मार के एक कमबैक किया। इस गेम में केन विलियमसन ने एक कमबैक किया। हम लोगों ने देखा आज के दिन पे ग्लेन मैक्सवेल, मिचेल मार्श, उन लोगों को भी टाइम मिला तो उन लोगों ने भी परफॉर्मेंस दिया। तो मेरे को लगता है दिनेश कार्तिक एक बहुत क्वालिटी प्लेयर है, और इस वर्ल्ड कप में लीड अप करते करते जो जो गेम्स खेले हैं, हाँ मैं मानता हूँ विकेट कीपिंग शायद ऋषभ पंत बेटर विकेट कीपर है फॉर ऑल मीन्स, बट जस्ट बिकॉज ऑफ दिनेश कार्तिक का एक्स फैक्टर का बैटिंग, हाँ पता है ऑस्ट्रेलिया में उतना वो नहीं है, लेकिन ये जो लीड अप पे जो वो उन्होंने फॉर्म दिखाया है, तो मेरे को लगता है कि उनके साथ ही
मेरे ख्याल
परसिस्ट
से
करना चाहिए और वो रिजल्ट
एडिलेड
देंगे।
में ऋषभ पंत को भी खिला सकता है, दिनेश कार्तिक को भी खिला सकता है, क्योंकि एक एक बाउंड्री काफ़ी छोटा है और दिनेश कार्तिक भी इफेक्टिव ही रहेगा, क्योंकि सैम करन वगैरह के खिलाफ वो काफ़ी क्रीज का इस्तेमाल कर सकता है, क्योंकि आपको पता है सैम करन इंग्लैंड का सबसे बेस्ट डेथ बॉलर रहा है और सैम करन वर्सेस दिनेश कार्तिक हमेशा से एक बैटल रहा है और दिनेश कार्तिक के पास अपर हैंड भी है, क्योंकि दिनेश कार्तिक के पास वो लैप शॉट है और रेंज भी काफ़ी डिफरेंट है ऋषभ पंत के
कंपैरिजन में।
खिलाफ हो जाता है, क्योंकि ऋषभ पंत ऐसा एक मेलबर्न जैसे ग्राउंड में इफेक्टिव रहेगा और एडलेड जैसे ग्राउंड
बट आई
में
मीन
दिनेश कार्तिक
ऋषभ पंत के साथ एक इशू यही रहा है कि वो जब नंबर 5 या नंबर 6 पे आते हैं तो फिर वो सीधे सीधे वो लोग वो बाउंड्री लगाने के वो एक क्षमता थी उनकी, वो अब थोड़ी थोड़ी सी खो जा रही है, क्योंकि वो दिख नहीं रहा है हमें वो ऋषभ पंत जो पहले वो फ्री फ्लोइंग बैटर था। फॉर एग्जाम्पल वो जब दिल्ली डेयरडेविल्स या फिर दिल्ली कैपिटल्स जब बना, तो उनके लिए जब वो खेलता था तो वो स्टार्टिंग में आता था और बहुत फ्रीली बैट करता था, मतलब उसे पहले बॉल पे ही चौका लगाने छक्का लगाने में कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं थी, बट अब उसको ऐसे 10 से 12 बॉल लग रहा है एकदम थोड़ा सा स्टार्ट लेने के लिए, और वो प्रॉब्लम अगर आप नंबर 5 नंबर 6 में आते हो टी20 गेम में तो आपके पास रहता ही कितना 7 से 8 ओवर रहता है, और उस
जी
7 से 8 ओवर में अगर आप 2 ओवर ही डिफेंड या फिर रन लेने में लगा लो तो फिर फिनिशिंग करने में बहुत प्रॉब्लम हो जाएगी, और स्पेशली जब आप ऑस्ट्रेलिया जैसे कंडीशंस में खेलते हो एंड आपने देखा है कि भले ही वो स्टार्टिंग के 6 ओवर में बॉल थोड़ा सा स्विंग करता हो, बट एक बार वो 6 ओवर 7 ओवर चले जाते हैं फिर तब जाके वो बैटिंग करने का मौका आता
जी
है, तो उस सिचुएशन में वो 2 ओवर 3 ओवर बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट हो सकता है। सो हमको वो भी एक तरीके से देखना पड़ेगा कि दिनेश कार्तिक भले ही आउट हो रहा हो बट वो बॉल्स भी नहीं खा रहा है, बट
हाँ।
अगर ऋषभ पंत बॉल्स खा के आउट हुआ तो इन्हें को बहुत ज्यादा नुकसान
और
होगा।
आप देखिएगा तो एक स्टैट था क्रिकेट फो का, उसी हिसाब से एक मिनिमम 1000 बॉल फेस करके सबसे कम स्ट्राइक रेट किसी प्लेयर के पास रहा हो वो ऋषभ पंत है, और ऋषभ पंत का स्ट्राइक रेट उतना खास नहीं है, कुछ 110 115 के उस हिसाब से, और ऋषभ पंत के पास यही
120 के
यही मसला
आसपास
रहा
है।
है कि उसका पास रोल क्लैरिटी उतना अच्छा नहीं रहा। मैचअप के हिसाब से यूज कर सकते हैं ऋषभ पंत को, पर T20 प्लेयर के हिसाब से ऋषभ पंत को प्रूव करना ही है अभी। मेरे को पता भी नहीं कि ऋषभ पंत उतना कैसे होगा 2024 वर्ल्ड कप का स्कीम ऑफ थिंग्स, क्योंकि ईशान किशन और संजू सैमसन भी अच्छे ही काम कर रहे हैं डोमेस्टिक सर्किट में, क्योंकि अभी संजू सैमसन का भी नाम बहुत आ रहा है, क्योंकि संजू सैमसन का डोमेस्टिक सफलता भी अच्छा रहा है इंडियन टीम के साथ भी, जब वो साउथ अफ्रीका सीरीज में जब मौका मिला संजू सैमसन में अच्छा ही किया है, और संजू सैमसन का रेंज भी है बहुत अच्छा, क्योंकि पावर गेम संजू सैमसन के पास हमेशा रहा है, और संजू सैमसन के पास भी यही मसला है कि उसको टॉप शॉट में बैटिंग करना पड़ेगा ही पड़ेगा, और ईशान किशन के साथ भी यही है, तो आपके पास एक ही विकेट कीपर है जो फिनिशिंग अभी कर सकता है धोनी के पास, वो एक दिनेश कार्तिक। तो इसी वजह से दिनेश कार्तिक को अभी मौका मिल रहा है, और अच्छे काम भी देखिएगा तो पिछले 15 इनिंग्स में तो उसके पास 2 मैन
अगर
ऑफ द मैच।
शायद हमें ऐसी पॉसिबिलिटी हो सकती है अगर अभी अभी ऑब्वियसली इस फ्यूचर में इंडियन टीम एक ट्रांजिशन की तरफ बढ़ रहा है, क्योंकि विराट कोहली रोहित शर्मा ये ऐसे बहुत प्लेयर्स हैं जो कि अपने एकदम करियर के सेकंड हाफ में जा रहे हैं, तो फिर अब इन यंगस्टर्स को चांस मिलेगा तो हो सकता है इनमें से कोई एक अगर फिनिशर के रोल पे आए, और भले वो एक प्योर बैट्समैन हो, ताकि हम आई थिंक एट दिस पॉइंट इन टाइम हमारे पास उतने अच्छे विकेट कीपिंग फिनिशर्स नहीं है, हमारे पास ओपनिंग विकेट कीपर्स बहुत ज्यादा है। आई मीन एबल ने ऑलरेडी नाम ले लिए कुछ के, तो उस सिचुएशन में आई थिंक मे बी आई मीन इसी वजह से मुझे केएस भरत पे बहुत भरोसा था।
हाँ,
मैं चाहता था कि वो आईपीएल में परफॉर्म करे, पर वो गलत टीम में आ गए एक तरीके से, क्योंकि
और
दिल्ली में
उसको भी
बहुत ज्यादा
ओपनिंग में
ही लोग
खिलाता है,
थे।
मतलब उसको भी टी
आई
ट्वेंटी
थिंक
इनिंग्स में थोड़ी ना चौथा चौथा नंबर पे 7वां नंबर पे खिलाता है। उसको भी क्या नंबर 2 1 या तो 4 पे खिलाता है।
बट आई
तो
थिंक
एक
उसके
वही
पास
मसला
वो
रहा
एक
है।
एक फ्री फ्लोइंग बैटिंग है, मतलब एक तरीके से मैं बता रहा हूँ कि उसका डेवलपमेंट हो सकता है उस तरीके से, बट
हाँ,
ऑब्वियसली
पर
उस
डोमेस्टिक में
ऑब्वियसली
भी
इशू यही
वो
है।
ऊपर ही बैटिंग करता है, तो मेरे को
दैट
कुछ
इज
समझ
हाँ,
में
आई
नहीं आ रहा है।
थिंक सबसे बड़ा इशू यही है, अगर इन प्लेयर्स को आप पहले से बता दो कि अगर आपको इंडियन टीम में आना है तो आपको ये पर्टिकुलर रोल में हम आपको ले सकते हैं, तो फिर वो उस हिसाब से अपने आप को ढलने की कोशिश कर सकते हैं। अब दिनेश कार्तिक का एग्जांपल ले लो। दिनेश कार्तिक जब आरसीबी में आए तो उनको एक तरीके से आइडिया था कि हाँ, अगर मैं फिनिशिंग कर सकता हूँ आरसीबी के लिए, तो शायद मेरे को इंडियन टीम में भी वो ले सकते हैं। तो उस हिसाब से ही उन्होंने
तो
खेला।
उसी
बट
वजह से उसको रोल क्लैरिटी भी मिला, उसी वजह से उसको
एग्जैक्टली
सिलेक्शन भी मिला।
अब अगर बीसीसीआई में भी इस तरीके से शायद डोमेस्टिक टीम्स
और
को
मेरे
या
को
फिर
लगता है कि जब
फ्रेंचाइजीज को
इतना
बता दे।
दिनों से उनके पास ये रोल क्लैरिटी है और उनको ये जिम्मा
हाँ,
सौंपा गया है कि इंडिया का
नहीं,
फिनिशर
नहीं,
बनो आप,
ये
तो
भी
अब
अगर
इन्हें
आप
देखो
ऋषभ
कि
परफॉर्म
पंत
करना
की देख
चाहिए
लो,
इस
ऋषभ
दुनिया में।
पंत
पूरे
दिल्ली
साल
कैपिटल्स के लिए
में
आता है बैट करने के लिए
इस
नंबर
पूरे
4 नंबर
आईपीएल
5
के
पे।
इस आईपीएल पूरा आईपीएल देखो, पूरा आईपीएल में बस एक ही इंडियन फिनिशर था आपके लिए।
हाँ,
एक ही इंडियन बंदा फिनिशिंग कर रहा था उसका टीम के लिए, वो था दिनेश कार्तिक। हार्दिक पांड्या भी फिनिश नहीं कर रहा था। चेन्नई में भी जडेजा भी नंबर 5वें नंबर पे, चौथे नंबर पे, और जडेजा
जडेजा का
फिनिशर
तो
ही था।
ऊपर
उसी
नीचे
वजह
था
से
इस
जडेजा
साल।
को भी हेड्स अप मिला था।
जडेजा
पर
फ्लोटर
आप
है।
फ्लोटर है एक हिसाब से, पर एक ही बंदा फिनिश कर रहा था पूरे पूरे साल, वो था दिनेश कार्तिक। और
हम्म।
कोई कोई एक इंडियन बंदे का नाम बोलो जो फिनिश कर सकता है, पूरे आईपीएल में भी नहीं, मेरे को नहीं मिला। राहुल तिवारी एक नाम था, उसको ट्राई कर सकता था अक्षर पटेल की
बट
जगह। मैं
बट
मैं
राहुल
काफी
तेवतिया
हैरान
के
था।
गेम में बहुत सारे फ्लॉज है और आई थिंक सिमिलर टाइप का बॉलर हो जाता
फिटनेस
क्योंकि
इश्यूज भी
इंडिया
बहुत है आई
जब
थिंक,
वर्ल्ड कप स्क्वाड को
प्राइमरीली।
इमेजिन कर रहे थे तब वो उन लोग के दिमाग में था अ बॉलर दैट कैन सपोर्ट चाहल, क्योंकि वो लोग इसी पे लीड अप कर रहे थे कि चाहल या बिश्नोई में से किसी को।
हाँ,
अश्विन तो आउट
हाँ,
ऑफ द सिलेबस आ गया अचानक से परफॉर्मेंस
देख
के साथ।
मेरे हिसाब से तो मैं हमेशा राहुल तेवटे को बैक ही किया, क्योंकि उसके पास वो टैलेंट रहा है और क्षमता रहा है कि मैच बदल
But I
सकता
think
है।
there is a massive technical flaw in his batting because he's
Also, I
too
think
much
I think
inclined
overall
on
he
hitting
was
every delivery
considered, if
towards
I'm
the leg
not
side.
wrong, he was very
He
close to
was
being an Indian call-up, but I think the
Yeah, he
fitness
was
issues
considered, and
like
fitness is an
it
issue
was
for
a
him.
Varun Chakravarti sort of an issue, right? Varun Chakravarti also was very close to was in the
उसको
Indian team.
Yeah.
डेवलप कर
The
सकता है,
fitness
मतलब
issues
उसको
is what
डेवलप
the issue
करके
is. I
एक
think
अच्छी फिनिशर के मोल्ड में बना सकता है। 7वें नंबर पे
हाँ,
बैटिंग कर भी
एंड
सकता है,
मुझे लगता है कि
बॉलिंग भी
अगर
कर
राहुल
सकता है।
तेवाटिया ऐसे ही
But
खेलता
fitness
रहा
again,
और वो
he
इम्प्रूव
has to
करता
pass
रहा।
that yo-yo test, right? पिछले साल भी यही
या
हुआ था कि
I think he's
वरुण
very fit,
चक्रवर्ती
man.
और
I think he failed once, but he looks very fit. He's a phenomenal fielder. So
I think
I
he's
don't
worked
think.
on his fitting. I mean, not fitting rather. He's worked on his fitness a lot, and
Hmm.
that's where I feel in the next 2 years, if Rahul Tewatia performs at this level and the kind of coaches that we have in Gujarat Titans, or if he ends up somewhere else, then I mean in IPL throughout, and also the
It'll be
fact that he's
interesting to
worked
see
on his
where
fitness,
Gujarat Titans use
I
their
think
finishers.
he will become a
The
he'll
number of
come in the
finishers
rankings of an
Gujarat
Indian team
Titans
very soon.
have is a lot.
Yeah.
It's going to be interesting
Also,
where
if
they
you look at
deploy him.
also if you look at the fact that who's your finisher right now, it's Dinesh Karthik as of now. Dinesh
Yeah,
Karthik is 36 if I'm not wrong,
37.
and 36, 37. This is probably his
37.
last World Cup ever for India, and that's where
Maybe
you have
maybe
someone like
39
that role is
by
going
the
to get
start of the
empty
next
very
World Cup.
soon.
He'll
That
be
role is going to get
39 by the start of the next World Cup.
yeah.
So it's going to
So
be interesting to
that
see
role
where
is
he
going
fits.
to open up very soon, and that's where I feel someone like a Rahul Tewatia has a very good chance.
And maybe Hardik Pandya will have to play more finishers role, because he's not been playing that role as well. And if you look in the last 6 months, he's been playing as a
But I
middle
think
order
for
bat.
me, I don't prefer Hardik Pandya in that role, and I'll tell you why. I think Hardik Pandya has transformed himself into that batsman who is able to now, pivot. And I think Indian team is able to pivot using Hardik Pandya, where when Hardik Pandya comes into bat, Indian team needs a run rate of let's say 8 to 8.5 in the middle overs, and then in the last 5 overs, and then in the last 5 overs, suddenly he'll explode and he'll start scoring runs, and that's the kind of batsman he's turning into. And that's where I think he's playing that role really
And
well
I
for
think
Gujarat
a lot has
Titans.
to do with him
This year's World Cup,
considering Mahendra Singh Dhoni as one of his mentors. So
yeah,
the game that he has chosen is to take the game deep. So no matter what
exactly.
the required rate is, you often see Hardik
So
Pandya
I
trying to
mean,
take the game as deep as possible.
for me now, Hardik Pandya is someone who can bat 25 to 30 balls and score 60 to 65 runs. But I don't know if I don't know if it's right, to be very honest, to put him again in that position where you are asking him to score 15 of 45 or
See,
50.
Kumar, I think the issue is we're not talking about wicket keepers. We are happy there are so many wicket keepers in the team, but there is no player who's there to do the finishing job. So we are looking at a finisher, not a player who does wicket keeping. So that's it.
And I
I
think
also
India
have
has been
opinion
really
on it.
struggling with like this position of finisher, because rightly mentioned in the IPL as well, there was Dinesh Karthik who stood out as a finisher for the franchise. Other than that, we did not have any Indian youngsters step up and do the role in a consistent basis. You had Rahul Tewatia pulling off games. You had somebody like Shah Rukh Khan pulling off one or two games in between, but there was no one that could do it in a consistent level at a strike rate of in excess of probably 170, 180. And
Yeah,
Dinesh Karthik had a strike
yeah,
rate in excess of 200. And he
yeah.
Yeah.
persisted with that. He brought that game into the Indian team. He won two back-to-back man of the match, not back-to-back, but he won two man of the match awards in quick time after getting introduced into the Indian team. And I think he sort of made this position his own. And I think he actually put himself up the picking order in terms of
I think if he
batting when it
has
came to
one
Rishabh
good
Pant.
knock, it will give him a lot of confidence. It could come in the semi-final as well. So that is
It
what
would
it
Definitely,
is.
I
come
think
in. It would come
again,
in against
I
Zimbabwe
don't
as
think if
well. I
India
mean,
bats first, I don't think that Dinesh Karthik will get to play a major role in the game against Zimbabwe, because this top-heavy Indian team with their top four almost being consistent in all the games. I mean, you have Virat Kohli, Surya Kumar Yadav, and either of Rohit Sharma or Rahul stepping in
Hmm.
every other game. So if I expect them to do the same in the game against Zimbabwe as well. So I don't really know whether Dinesh Karthik will get that opportunity or not. But whenever Dinesh Karthik has got that opportunity, we saw in the game against, I think, in the bilateral series against South Africa in the last T20I, Dinesh Karthik was promoted up the order at number 4. And I think the knock that he played, a 40-run knock of 17, 18, 18, 19 balls, where India was chasing 230 odd. I think that just goes to show the confidence that he has. I think he's very confident right now. It is just a
Yeah.
matter of time when everything clicks and Dinesh Karthik is going to win India games. And this
And
that
not
might
just
be
that,
the case in
Kumar
this
was
World Cup
talking
as well.
about why don't you pick a proper batter instead of wicket-keeping batsman? See, Kumar, again, the point is this, that the moment you pick up a proper batter, is he well defined to be playing in the finishing role? We don't have a lot of finishers in the entirety of our ecosystem in
I
India.
think there is only
Very few
Deepak
players who
Hooda
can
and
finish.
Shreyas Iyer in
No, no,
this team. Other
they are
than
not even finishers. So let's not
I don't
yeah,
know.
even
so
go
Shreyas
into
Iyer
this.
there
is
is
a
no
finisher.
question of
Deepak
There is no
Hooda
question
used
about.
to be, I think, initially when he came for
Yeah.
Rajasthan Royals in his first season, he was a, sort of a finisher. But now I
But
think he's
no,
transformed his game again to
let's
a
not even
proper
get
one.
into that point. We have seen that
yeah.
with
See,
Deepak Hooda, he
Deepak
can't
Hooda
finish
didn't
it.
Yeah.
never justified his role as a finisher. He
Maybe
got
I
Exactly.
think
into
He
so
the
with
kind of, I
mix
mean,
Jadeja.
that's
because
the
of
reason
his
why he kind of
performances for
fell off the
Punjab
radar
Kings.
of IPL teams. I mean, when he came initially, he was that batter who could bat a bit, but then
Yeah.
because of that lack of success at that lower order, he kind of fell off the radar. But then
I
again,
mean, I don't think
for
that's
Lucknow
even a
Super
debate
Giants,
at
when he
this
was pushed
point,
up the
Jalen.
order,
I
he
mean, we don't
played
even
well.
have to talk about it because it's not the case.
Yeah.
I mean, he's not a finisher. So even if you have to say to play Virat Kohli at finisher, it does not do justice to his kind of batting. So at this point, you are looking for a finisher, and the only person you found was Dinesh Karthik because Rishabh Pant couldn't finish. Hardik Pandya was not playing that role. Jadeja and Dinesh Karthik are the only two players who could finish. So hence, you have to play someone at number 6. Number 6 in a T20 game is a finisher's role more than anybody else's role. So you have to
Yeah.
understand which batter can play in that particular role. New earnings asked, will India win the T20 World Cup? Just see, you have hit the nail right in the coffin. I'll just say India can win the T20 World Cup. They've started off pretty well at this point. From what they were at the start of the T20 World Cup, nobody gave them a chance to know what they are. They've shown massive
I
improvements
think
in their bowling department, which was a weakness. So they are certainly on the course to win the T20 World Cup, and we'll see how it goes. You take every
I
game at a
mean,
time.
for
Now let's
me, one thing going in India's favor is, I mean, you always say that I mean, India's probably not been the best team in this World Cup. They have not dominated their oppositions, but the fact that India has won their matches in getting into quote unquote a dog fight, what they are used to is winning matches from a pressure situation. Against Pakistan, they were in a pressure situation. They won a pressure situation. They won that game,
yeah.
and then again, they continue. I mean, against South Africa, they came very close. So in that kind of situation, they have been in pressure situation
That's a very
already,
good thing which you point out.
and
Teams
that's
who
where.
does that went on to go on to do well.
And you see, most often than not, teams who do dominate, when they suddenly get into trouble, they struggle to really, come out of it. But teams who have been in winning matches, very close matches, they will all of a sudden do really well. We saw that against, for example, I think Pakistan is a very good example. Pakistan in the T20 World Cup, in the previous T20 World Cup, did not lose any match till the semi-final. And that's when they really got into a little bit of trouble, and they could never really shift the momentum back to their hands. Because because Pakistan dominated most of their matches. They dominated India. They went on to dominate all the
Same was
oppositions
the
they played
case with
until
India in
Australia.
2015 World Cup as well. I mean, they
Yeah,
dominated the group stage,
2015,
everything
2016 World
went
Cup, for
against
example,
Australians.
in
No, no,
Test case.
Yeah,
2016 was different. I think 2019 and 2015 World Cups are two World Cups
yeah.
where you dominated through the course of group stage. Though you lost to England there, but you were dominating. predominantly all your wins were like
Yeah.
by huge margins, and you really didn't have to
I
worry
mean,
about
either you
coming from.
dominated or you lost. You lost badly. There was no in between, and that's where I think India really. But that's where I think India this time around has played in a lot more pressure situations. So maybe that's going to come in handy a lot more. When we saw, for example, New Zealand when they came
Mm,
into that pressure situation, they have been good as well. Today, I
yeah,
think. I mean, I know. I mean, probably against England they didn't do well, but I think overall, if you see against Sri Lanka, for instance, today against Ireland, they came back into both the innings. I think the first innings as well, it looked like Ireland had the upper hand. New Zealand turned things around in the second innings as well, when they got off to a very good start, the opening pair for Ireland, again they
yeah.
changed things around. I mean, you can
Mm,
argue that India probably has done it against better opposition, but at the end of the day, I think both these teams have done something extraordinary in that case. But if you look at England and Australia, I think it's the complete opposite. They have
mm,
let go of matches that you probably expected them to win. For example, when Ireland put pressure on England, they kind of crumbled until the rain came in. And same against Afghanistan, also they barely got through. Against New Zealand, they dominated. So this is where maybe England might suffer a little bit more, and we've seen that happen to England as well, just as much as it has happened to India.
yeah, absolutely. And something which all the teams will want to go is to be be part of pressure situation before they go into semifinals. And you know how it can come to affect you, especially the likes of India. If you've seen the last couple of World Cups, they've had dominating runs through the course of the World Cup. But when it comes to pressure situations in big matches, they've always been a letdown. And it has to do a lot with your journey to the final, where you've not had any hiccups. But this World Cup, it's been different. You've had a couple of hiccups already, especially Pakistan game, you pulled out of nowhere. Bangladesh game, you at one point you knew that you were going to lose it, but then again you pulled it up. And now Zimbabwe game, I don't know how it is going to go. And semi-final, let's see how it comes. If it is England, you know you have got the resources, you've been put under pressure on numerous occasions, so you are now well driven. Now you are well equipped to at least to tackle it. You will have the self-belief that you can pull it off from here. That's a very important self-belief to have in a team environment. Time and time again, if a team believes that they can pull 18 balls 40 runs, 18 balls 50 runs, then you will do it more often than not. You've seen them with Gujarat
Yeah.
Titans in the last season of IPL. They did it more often than not. The moment their team started doing it once, they started doing it twice, thrice, and so on and so forth. So that's one thing which you need to really keep believing. The dressing room atmosphere. I think the dressing room atmosphere is very good for Team India. They're doing a lot of things right, backing players, giving role clarity, keeping a good and light dressing room atmosphere. They have their top two players performing, Surya Kumar Yadav and Virat Kohli. So, and the bowling attack has stepped up as well. One of the biggest flaws which India had before the World Cup was the bowling attack. Now they've stepped up. So, having said that, I think in detail we'll cover India's game tomorrow before the game against Zimbabwe. So we'll talk about in detail what are the tactical breakdowns, what India should be doing even better to go ahead, what are the opening conundrums and everything. And so join us tomorrow. And tonight we'll be coming back at 11:30 again to talk about England versus Sri Lanka, the preview and the fantasy tips and everything. So come back and subscribe to the channel if you're new here. And we'll keep updating you, and we'll be giving you some exciting news through the course of this World Cup, and we'll be covering you in extensive with the help of data if you're enjoying that. So comment down as well if you want us to do something exciting. And pick play and win the Boom 11. So download the fantasy app if you haven't already. Play the predictor feature. It's absolutely free of cost to do that, and you can win so many cash vouchers and cash backs as well through the course of this World Cup and for the football World Cup as well. Have a good time, all of you, and see you in some time.
See you
Yeah.
guys.
Goodbye, guys.